Do you think religions are good or bad for society? Why do they exist in so many different forms? Why do billions of people feel so deeply connected to them, while others see them as nothing more than myths and control systems? And perhaps the most interesting question of all, if there is one ultimate truth behind them, why is it kept hidden? I remember back in college, a friend group I was hanging out with was having an argument about religion. I mean, I'm assuming we've all heard one before, right? But this one stood out to me because I realized something. My atheist friend was going on a rant about how religions are dumb and just a bunch of rules, and that struck a chord with my Christian friend who brought up community, and he said, look man, religion isn't just rules. It's about community. People actually show up when you're feeling messed up. Like if you're at a hospital, dealing with a family crisis, whatever, it matters. It brings people together, and I feel something through that. You really think you need a magic story to be decent to people? That's sad. And don't even get me started on all the suffering in the world. Leukemia, cancer, other deadly sicknesses, war, even lions eating zebras. The zebras are suffering then. And during all those terrible times, where's your perfect sky daddy? How is believing in the Bible sad? It gives us something bigger than ourselves. Without it, people just give up when life gets hard. We need that connection, or else we're just a bunch of random people hanging out. And yeah, sometimes life is messy, but maybe there's a bigger story, like stuff getting redeemed later in ways that we don't see. All of that is part of the mystery of God. Redeemed later. What, you mean like the war criminals and like the cancer cells and even the lions are going to explain themselves in the afterlife? That's insane. Look, if God wants creatures to have experiences like growth, love, and even pain, maybe suffering is part of the whole narrative. It doesn't mean that we like it, but maybe it has a role. A role? Dude, if one of my family members from a horrible disease, or if they're a victim of airstrikes, or of some of these horrible crimes that happen during war, or if my dog gets eaten by a lion, are they going to get gold stars in heaven? Then my atheist friend acknowledged that some of the stories in the Bible are kind of cool and that they do teach us lessons, but then he said, okay, but guess what? Plenty of other books, shows, movies, they also teach us those lessons. And the real reason that we stay together is us, friends, family, and random people who actually care. Not some cloud guy who we can't even see. Besides, if we build our values on evidence and shared humanity, we don't risk dividing ourselves over whose version of the story is right. Yeah, I can agree with the part about people over stories, but I guess that's the point anyway. I just think religions still bring people together. Sometimes the story is bigger than the suffering itself. The division does suck, but you see that without religion anyway. And the sense of belonging that it gives can actually save someone when they're really lost. So I had this planet in my memory because both of their energy and passion stuck with me. And looking back on it as years went by, and I read more books, learned more through life experiences, it hit me years later that they were actually arguing about the same thing, but they were using completely different languages. In this video, we're going to look at history, culture, and human psychology to look at the real reason religion exists, and how at the core, both of these perspectives from my old friends, and at the core of their passion, a lot of what they said is not actually wrong, but it got lost in the language they chose to communicate. And the reason for why religions exist is far deeper than most people think. By the end of this video, you'll understand what the truth is and why it's been kept hidden for thousands of years, and also how you can discover this truth for yourself. Thousands of years ago, people didn't have scientific methods or a deep understanding of psychology. To explain the mysteries of life, people had to rely on storytelling and mythology. These stories were the tools they had to convey deep truths about existence, the self, and the nature of reality. Over time, different cultures adapted these messages to fit their own context. Think about it. Different regions of the world had completely different customs, different animals they encountered, different natural environments, and different foods that they can use as symbols for telling their stories. This created many different versions of religion and spirituality. but at their core, the stories often convey the same essential truths. Despite the surface differences, they all point toward a reality that goes beyond the individual self. They describe the need to look past our identification with our bodies and minds to access a deeper experience of being. Without looking at it literally, the concept of God in these traditions is not a bearded man in the clouds. In these ancient scriptures, God represents absolute nothingness and infinity, the fundamental source and reality behind all things. Heaven and hell are also supposed to be symbolic. Hell represents the state of being trapped in ego and self-identity because this is a place of limitation and suffering. Hell is not a literal place, but it represents the state of being trapped in ego and self-identity, because this is a state of limitation and suffering. Heaven represents the opposite of that. It's the state of disidentification, where one experiences freedom and connection to the whole, to peace, to the infinity, all of which is untouchable by suffering. Faith is the willingness to take a leap into this deeper reality. It requires opening oneself to direct experience beyond rational thought. Good and evil are described in similar terms. Evil arises from selfishness and identification with the ego, while good comes from selflessness and realizing unity with everything. The devil represents the egoic self, the part of us that deceives itself into believing it is only a body and mind. It is not a literal red man with horns and a pitchfork. That's just a symbol for selfishness. We associate negative things with scary looking people or creatures or things. So some of these cultures had to put a face on evil so that people could feel afraid of being evil or acting out in evil, selfish ways. The afterlife and salvation are also understood as experiential and metaphorical. The afterlife represents living fully in the realization of nothingness, beyond destruction and suffering. Salvation is the process of awakening from egoic illusion to enlightened selflessness. The realization that you are more than just your body. It is about seeing beyond the surface of identity and stepping into a deeper truth. At the core, all these stories across all these cultures, despite their differences, are teaching the same essential idea. They guide people to look beyond their limited perspective, to see themselves as part of a larger reality, and to act in ways that reflect their understanding. Over time, however, these teachings often become dogma. They lose their original mystical essence and transform into rules, rituals, and systems of control. The deep truths that inspired them become hidden, leaving only the structure, yet the essence remains. Beneath the myths, beneath the rituals, there is a call to experience life directly, to awaken to the truth beyond the egoic self. Going back to the debate my atheist and religious friend had, they were both talking about the same underlying idea, just in different languages. My Christian friend framed it as faith, meaning, and connection through stories, and my atheist friend framed it as evidence, human values, and tangible care. They argue over rituals, symbols, and doctrines, but they're often pointing to the same truths about compassion, growth, and the meaning of life. Let me tell you something ironic though. The same pattern we see in religious people appears with atheists when they treat their atheism as a rigid belief system. Some atheists approach it with almost religious fervor by policing ideas, defending scientific doctrines, and insisting their ideas are the only rational way, while forgetting that the core questions about how to live, how to care, and how to understand suffering are shared across all these languages of thought. So how do we get from the truth to organized religions? It often begins with someone having a profound, enlightened experience. They see reality in a way that feels completely clear and undeniable to them. This experience is beyond normal perception or logic, and it transforms how they view life, themselves, and others. Naturally, they want to share it, but how do they explain this? How do they put this into words? When they try to explain it to others who have never experienced anything like it, the words fall short. Listeners may nod politely when they hear this person's experience, but the meaning does not land in the same way. Without having lived that moment themselves, it is almost impossible for them to truly grasp what is being described. Think about describing the taste of an orange to a person who has never seen or eaten a citrus fruit before. You can talk about its sweetness, its tang, or how the juice feels when it hits your tongue. You can compare it to other flavors they might know, like an apple or some other fruit. But no matter how detailed you get, your words can only get them so close. Without the actual taste, the understanding will always be incomplete. And notice how I'm using a metaphor right there to help you understand why describing this sense of enlightenment, this sense of discovering the truth of no self, it's hard to explain that to people who have never experienced that for themselves. So this is why so many cultures and traditions rely on stories, parables, and metaphors. These allow people to experience an idea indirectly in a way that speaks to the imagination and emotions. A story can create a mental image that feels real for the listener to connect with, even without first-hand experience. And when those stories are shaped to fit the language, customs, and worldviews of the time, they become even more effective. The challenge is that the truth behind these stories cannot be fully captured in words. Real understanding often comes from living through something yourself, not just hearing about it. Stories can point the way, but they can't take you all the way there. When these truths are shared widely, they often take on new forms. Over time, they may become belief systems or myths. Pieces of the original message may be lost, altered, or simplified so more people can grasp them. So this makes them easier to share, but also allows them to drift away from the direct experience they were meant to convey. And for some of these religions, think about what could happen after thousands of years. The message is going to change from what it originally said. Genuine understanding is rare because it requires more than learning information. It requires stepping into an experience, feeling it fully, and letting it change you. That is something no book, lecture, or story can give you on its own. Stories can inspire and prepare you, but living the truth is something that happens in the quiet moments of your own life. Some of you might be asking, how can you prove this truth to be real? The thing is, spiritual truth is not proven through logic or arguments. Spiritual truth must be experienced directly. There are some atheists who develop a form of dogma around materialism by rejecting anything mystical or spiritual. And if you're one of these people, just know that when you do this, your worldview starts to resemble the thing that you claim that you don't like, a religion. This is seen in a lot of people who treat science as if it were a fixed belief system rather than an ongoing process of discovery. What our society accepts as scientific fact today may be overturned tomorrow by the discovery of new evidence. This is how science works. Nothing is set in stone and never allowed to be revisited again with more experimentation. You can always redo an experiment yourself to see if the results that somebody else got is accurate. This is done all the time as time passes on with more technology and more discoveries to get and discover more accurate results. Science is for sure highly effective at describing physical matter, but it struggles to address subjective experience, known as qualia. Qualia refers to the felt qualities of perception and consciousness. The matter qualia problem remains one of the greatest unresolved challenges in science. Enlightenment, on the other hand, provides a direct resolution that goes beyond scientific explanation. Dogmatism, being stubborn about your beliefs, can be found in almost all people. Dogmatism appears as resistance, fear, anger, or dismissal when people's core beliefs are questioned. This dogmatic resistance keeps people from reaching deeper awareness. It holds them back within the illusions of the ego. Just like how organized religion can distance individuals from the divine through rigid belief systems, a dogmatic form of atheism can also cause people to fail to recognize the profound reality of nothingness. So, true spiritual realization is beyond both religious and atheistic frameworks. There's also 3 ways of knowing this divine truth. The first is through direct experience. The second is through conceptualizing that experience or thinking about it. The third and most transformative way is by becoming the thing itself. So this might mean experiencing the perspective of your own hand as if you were the hand itself. This means you would have to let go of identification with your body, mind, and thoughts, and looking at your hand as though you are that hand. Not your brain, not your thoughts, not your body, just your hand. This process has been called jailbreaking the mind. So reaching enlightenment involves releasing all of your beliefs, whether they are religious or scientific. And this is absolutely a difficult and emotionally demanding thing to do. It can feel like hacking the mind from the inside, taking years or decades, and often involves setbacks and struggle. But for those who succeed in doing this, they experience profound freedom, deep peace, and the awareness of absolute nothingness or infinity. Can you imagine what it would be like if everyone in the world was able to be at their freest, most peaceful version of themselves? It would be as though the egoic rulers of society, if they were still consumed by greed and lust for power, wouldn't want that to happen, right? Capitalism would collapse if we all chose to just not comply and live our lives to the freest, least egoic way of being. So that brings us to a question I asked in the beginning of the video about why the truth has been kept hidden for thousands of years. Religions may have begun as genuine efforts by their founders to guide people toward personal growth and enlightenment. These early teachings often focused on inner transformation, self-awareness, and understanding the deeper nature of reality. Over time, as the teachings spread, they were shaped by institutions or altered in ways similar to the telephone game. Words were reinterpreted, practices were adjusted, and the main focus gradually shifted toward literal interpretations of scriptures rather than exploring their metaphysical meaning. The truth about these changes and about why religions exist in their current form is often kept hidden because revealing it could weaken the power of the institutions that rely on them. There are four main reasons why this happens. First is control and stability. Throughout history, rulers and elites have used religion as a framework to unify people, legitimize authority, and maintain order. If people understood its human-made origins too clearly, the social cohesion it creates could weaken. Second is economic interest. Many religious organizations have accumulated vast wealth, land holdings, and political influence. Questioning their foundations could threaten these resources and the systems that protect them. Third is psychological comfort. Religion often offers answers to life's most difficult questions about what happens after this life, about purpose, and about morality. Learning that some of these answers may have been shaped for social control rather than pure truth could cause deep personal distress. And fourth is narrative control. By keeping their founding myths sacred and unquestioned, institutions maintain loyalty, discourage dissent, and ensure their continued influence. So to sum that all up, the truth is kept hidden because exposing it could disrupt political structures, economic power, and the psychological stability of entire societies, all of which have been carefully built and preserved over centuries or even thousands of years. But now I'm sure that many of you believe that you could be and should be happier and more at peace with your life, to overcome whatever challenges you are currently facing in your life, and ultimately to live in a society that is more peaceful and that actually takes care of its people. Even if you're skeptical, let's break down how you can discover this truth for yourself. Discovering the truth for yourself is a deeply personal journey. Throughout history, a very small number of people have reached this understanding. Mystics, yogis, sages, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and Zen masters have experienced a profound realization that there is no fixed self. Their insights often go against the common ways people think about the world, which can make them difficult to understand or easy to overlook. Still, their lives show that it is possible to break through the layers of conditioning and see reality more clearly. This kind of realization cannot be given to you through belief alone. It's not something that can be memorized or inherited from a book. It must be experienced directly through your own awareness. To begin, it helps to set aside rigid beliefs and create space for new ways of seeing. Enlightenment is not about following rituals or defending doctrines. Enlightenment is about a direct and personal understanding of who you really are, beyond the identity you have been taught to accept, the identity society shaped you to believe. Some ways you can achieve this is through a combination of years of deep meditation, deep self-awareness throughout your everyday life, reading through hundreds of books, and other mindfulness practices. The path is not always easy. It can challenge everything you think you know about yourself and the world. Yet for those who walk it with patience and sincerity, it can become the most meaningful pursuit in life. Psychedelics could be a tool for helping you get there, but it's not always necessary. You can check out this video here where I break all that down. And for other topics on psychology, spirituality, and how the world affects you, check out this video right here.